So let's move from the strategy down into the tactics to where the rubber meets the road. What are the tools, the tactics, the teams, the stuff that actually is moving forward for your company? Anything that you've seen specifically work for you, or anything that you're certainly excited about putting into place in the future? We'll start at the end and come back.
Thank you. I would say a few things. I would first start with just the authentic conversations in the workplace. Last summer, we started our Color Brave conversations around race in the workplace after some of the tragedies that were happening across the U.S. I think we were one of the first firms and companies in the U.S. to do this in such a large-scale way, and we really did it from the bottom up and said, go out, have these conversations. They're very important to talk about people's experience outside the workplace, and really we know that people bring a lot of this into the workplace every day. So that was very important. At the same time, we really rolled out our colorblind training to everyone, and that is our unconscious bias training. And what we did this year that was, I think, different, you talked earlier about do you make it mandatory or not. We know you shouldn't make it mandatory, but we did, however, say it's a really important part of your leadership skills in this firm. So if you're going to be promoted in this firm, you need to take the unconscious bias training because we think it's so important. And so now out of our 52,000 people, over 30,000 people have taken that training, and we think that has been a really important tool for people to be aware of their blind spots, but also to mitigate them.
Beautiful.
I think you're absolutely right. I don't think that we can talk about tools even or programs unless we first identify that unconscious bias and make the company as a whole, especially leaders, aware. So we did a training with the gender leadership group in my office with just our senior leaders, and 95% of the attendees were men, all of whom said there is no issue with gender in a workplace. I work with women every day. Everybody respects everybody. There's no sexism here. Once we went through the numbers and said, hey, listen, we're at 26%, right? What do you want to do about that? It was instant solution mode. But my point is, it was giving them the tools and the language to talk about gender, their own gender, as well as the genders around them. That safe place to have that discussion and really identify it. Yes, there is an issue, and yes, it makes business case to solve it, and then move into solution mode. So when I as the HR manager, roll out a program that says to all hiring managers, we're gonna have 50-50 candidate polls. You can't talk to any candidates unless half of them are women and half of them are men. If I had, which I did actually roll out before the training, I didn't get a lot of buy-in. But after that workshop, I got a lot of buy-in. People understood why it was important for the culture and for the business and for the bottom line.
I think for us, our number one goal was to embed diversity and inclusion into everything that we do. And so as we started from the top with our board of directors and pushed down into our senior leaders, our business leaders, we then looked at, well, if you're going to embed, you have to then allow, first and foremost, debunk the myth that diversity and inclusion really lies as the responsibility of HR and D&I, and make it everyone's responsibility. We had senior leaders that stepped forward, Kim Rivera, who is our general counsel at HP, who said, you know what, the impact that I want to make, because we have the culture that we do at HP, gives her the runway to be able to say, not only do I want to impact the work that we're doing internally, I want to be able to influence the industry. And so what she did as the general counsel, she was one of three that made a public statement that said, we will do a 10% holdback with our law firms. We want to see our law firms have, at the highest level, at the partnership level, we want to see them have a representation of women and underrepresented groups and minorities. And so Kim pushed for that, and that's been about a year ago. We've been brainstorming, and she's going to do some more stuff to keep pushing that agenda. Our chief marketing officer, Antonio Lucio, did something similar with the advertising and communications agencies that he works with. He said, if I'm accountable, give me the time first and foremost to, and our motto is kind of, the time for talk is over, the time for action is now. And so Antonio took that to heart and said, I want to first ensure that my organization is representative of what I'm demanding of the agencies that I work with. And so he got his organization at about 50% women. He's still working on minority, U.S. minority, that is. And so then he pushed out to his groups and his agencies a mandate that said, you will be responsible. HP's mission is to create products for everyone everywhere, and we need to have our agencies represent everyone everywhere. And so he put out that mission for his agencies, and they are working fast and furious right now in order to get that representation at the creative level, at the production level. And we're going to keep pushing.
Nice.
So I talked about our strategic framework, and our framework has 5 pillars to it. Begin that all align with our mission and how, from a priority standpoint, we want diversity, inclusion, and equity to show up in our organization. There's, first of all, before we get to those pillars, though, there's a guiding belief and principle that within Kaiser Permanente, that our workforce, from the board level to the front lines, our aspiration is to have it reflect the diversity of the communities that we serve. And we serve very diverse communities across this country. Our patient and member base speaks over 126 different languages. And so we know we have to be culturally relevant, responsive, and we use our workforce as allies and internal advisors and external ambassadors in that effort. So that's a value proposition and a set of expectations. From a standpoint of how we get our work done and how it's fully integrated, we follow the same philosophy that this has to be fully embedded in our business operations, that it is a shared responsibility and accountability for everyone in the organization supporting our mission. And we focus in 5 areas. One is in the actual delivery of health and healthcare services, the clinical care, which is a big part of the services that we deliver as an integrated care delivery model. Workforce, to make sure that we have access to diverse talent and develop that talent into diverse leaders. The third area is in our marketing and sales arena, to make sure as our organization grows membership, that we are attractive based on our value proposition and our delivery and suite of services to all communities, diverse and otherwise. The fourth area is in our supplier diversity and our community engagement, to make sure that as a very large integrated system that earns, has revenues in the $65 billion range, that a significant amount of our vendor spend buying supplies and services are also directed toward women and minority-owned businesses in the communities as part of a community engagement strategy to ensure that economic engines are created in our communities as a source of changing the living circumstances of people. And then the fifth area is our focus on policies, regulatory, and accreditation requirements, all of which are increasingly requiring that measurement and demonstration by measurement of your commitment to diversity, inclusion, and policies and practices is there. And in those areas, we measure and benchmark tremendously to see how we're doing against accreditation requirements, as well as how we're doing on a national and international basis, on a comparative basis, and we lead in a lot of those categories. But in actually tactical things to get work done, leadership is defined, it's clear to our leaders that this is not only an expectation, but a requirement in terms of developing diverse talent. We put metrics in place to help leaders see at their line of sight how well or not they're doing this. We provide tons of training, engagement, awareness, focus on leading inclusively in highly diverse environments to give people not just an awareness, but actual skill in doing this. And in our workforce arenas, we have many of the engagement strategies that others do around the value of employee resource groups, where talent is identified through those groups for advocacy, but also as well as for visibility, for availability, for sponsorship and mentoring. And in the care space, our focus has been to fully integrate our cares about diversity and inclusion into our quality improvement activities so that we don't believe that you can achieve full excellence in clinical quality care at any level, wellness and prevention as well as acute and chronic care, unless you have demonstrated that you have eliminated disparities and that all populations you're serving are getting the benefit of your outcomes, with full recognition that you have to tailor those solutions for the specific needs of where people, where you meet people where they stand. So those are just categories of tactics and approaches that we use on a broad scale basis, fully integrated into the business, and then we measure everything, process and outcomes, to give people insight as to where there are opportunities to make sure accountability is held. And now we're building this into our performance management system as well. And the last thing I'll say is the biggest journey, even with a formal integrated business strategy, is really the culture. Because we've all heard the expression, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can have all these plans and everybody lined up and ready to go. But when you have the kind of issues that we're talking about here around culture and values, yes, people come to the workplace, but they come from an external environment where we know their upbringing, the values that are espoused, what they believe, what they've experienced, the biases that come with that is all brought into the workplace as well. So you have to have a strategy and engagement for how you're taking on culture. And that gives you insights. If you measure culture, specifically measure inclusion, do you have it or not? And then stratify your data by different demographic categories so that you can see, while our overall scores may look good, certain communities, members, certain patient and workforce members are not feeling pretty happy about what's going on, whether it's on a gender basis, an ability basis, sexual orientation basis, et cetera. And that stratification has really been helpful because it gives insights, it creates transparency, and transparency creates opportunity for improvement as well as accountability.
Dale, can you tell that Dr. Copeland was a surgeon? Very thorough, right? I'd want him to do surgery on me.
Details matter.
That's right. That's right.
I want to take a little bit of a different tack here, which is if you were to speak to a room full of leaders and potential leaders, the next generation of leaders, what would you tell them to go and start doing today? What's like the thing you would get deeper knowledge about? What's the thing you would invest your time in? If you were starting today as a leader in this space, where would you put yourself?